That's what I'm trying to tell you. Risk has a problem. A problem so big that the player who rolls this during the first action of the rulebook, they win the entire game. Ever wonder what it would look like if the most recognizable board game title, Risk, in the largest tabletop game, Warhammer 40k, had a baby? Well, grab your servitor and brace yourself for a descent into the grimdark underbelly of Risk, Warhammer 40k. Players, game designers, board game hackers. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's causing this game to be over before it begins, what its most shameful secret really is, and what the fudge nuggets is going on with the dice. Hold up, before we get too deep into it, this happens in literally every version of Risk, including the classic. The difference? Risk Warhammer 40k acknowledges it and claims to have fixed it. We'll see about that. Oh, an authenticity check here. I use some AI images to get you in the mood while talking about the lore of the game, but this script, it's all me. There's board game testers, and then there's me, Pones Jones, a master board game hacker. My team and I play, hack, and unlock a game's true potential. If you're a board game creator, or if you love viciously dissecting a game's mechanic, then you're in the right place. But if we're gonna unravel Risk's most shameful secret, we're gonna have to understand the setting that all this takes place in. A setting with countless billions of innocent lives hanging in the balance. 40,000 years in the war-torn future, our colonized grimdark galaxy is marred by war, corruption, and ancient horrors. This is the Great Rift, a catastrophic tear in reality, opening a portal to another dimension, a dimension called the Warp, visible at night by countless billions who are struggling to survive on this 8-regioned wasteland of a planet called Vigilus. Those same countless billions are about to be chiseled into the history books as collateral damage to a mass bloodshed disaster called the War of Beasts. Next stop on the way to figure out what's over before it begins, a setup that includes 5 factions. Spewing forth from the Warp, orcs, a genetically engineered race of battle-hungry fighters. Soon, other factions begin planetfall. The Eldari craft worlds, a race of advanced elf-like beings surviving on continent-sized spaceships after destroying their own homeworld. Chaos Space Marines, once protectors of man but corrupted by the dark powers of the Warp and the Chaos gods that live within it. The Gene Stealers, a faction that infects a planet, signals home to an alien race called the Tyranids to swoop down and literally consume everyone, including them. Nom nom. Blue Ultramarines, genetically altered humans with up to 22 organ implants, including 2 hearts, 3 lungs, etc. Sworn to protect humanity and the Emperor back on Earth. Actually, side note here, these minis are bang on. Just look at them.
Oh, and those vehicle units are a placeholder. They simply represent 3 troops worth of armies on the board.
This Risk version also features faction leaders who boost combat for troops in their same territory. And speaking of territories, here is our board game map. 42 territories broken into 7 regions, 6 of which share fort walls.
Oh yes, a fort wall. What is it, and how is it significant to gameplay?
Well, on this Vigilus map, a fort wall is an armored, fortified travelway elevated from the wastelands connecting 2 hive-sprawl regions for trade and passage of people. But in Risk, well, it might just be one of the most ingenious things to ever grace a Risk map. These fort walls are a territory of their own, a separate land that exists in both regions simultaneously. Meaning, in order to hold this region, or this one, and also collect a region bonus, you'll have to control the fort wall between them. And there's only one fort wall, meaning only one of you is getting the bonus.
Brilliant! Absolutely brilliant. When a game lacks some fundamentals, it's undeniably the worst. Like in Risk, Warhammer 40k, sporting a flaw so ridiculous it turns a single chance cube into a predetermining death sentence. A shameful stain on the vast legacy of Risk, a stain I intend to play through, while at the same time using my expertise to fix it. Cause just like in life, what you start out with shouldn't predetermine your success.
I stake my claim on Lake Dawntor as my first territory, but I'm not delusional. I realize there is no possible way to actually claim and then hold the Dawntoria region, or any region for that matter. The math is against me. Starting territory counts, troop counts, initial reinforcements, fending off waves of attack, the enemy's defenses, incapable of drawing a territory card, all against me.
See the first action in the rulebook: 5 players, 5 dice, 1 outcome. An outcome that raises the question, Why even bother playing? It sounds like we're describing a doom scroller of a game night. So tell me, what's the point in having everyone over expecting some epic game tabletop memories for all of it to be already over before it even begins? That's what I'm trying to tell you. Risk has a problem. A problem so big that the player who rolls this during the first action of the rulebook, they win the entire game.
See, this first action, even before players pick their factions, is to decide the turn order. Highest roll goes first. Play continues to the left. The moment that dice stops rolling, the entire outcome of the game is already predetermined. The only possible way of breaking from this fate? Game box loads of luck.
But not my luck. See, I'm 5th out of 5 players. Is a death sentence. Here, I'll show you.
With 42 territories divided amongst us, each player should get 8, with 2 remaining. But you can't have empty territories in Risk. And since I'm not the first or second player, I end up with less territories.
Couple that with future waves of maxed out armies crashing against my battle-weary troops, chiseling them down to a mere stain on the map. Yes, obviously, not all the other factions are gonna gang up on just one, but I'm last to play. So inevitably, I'm going to get attacked, and in Risk, you only ever attack the weaker army. A weaker army that, by design, starts with the least number of units on the board.
That's because, beginning of each turn, including everyone's very first turn, you get beginning reinforcements that are calculated based on the number of territories you control.
So just imagine how many territories I'll have under my control for my beginning reinforcements of my very first turn. Did you guess basically 0? 'Cause you're right.
This mostly applies to a 3-player game where gaining more than the default 3 troops of beginning reinforcements is possible, but of course, holding on to enough territories to do that before your first turn even starts, basically impossible. That means less troops to defend your lands, but it also means you have less to launch attacks with.
Okay, so just don't launch any attacks then. Just sit back and defend a few key areas, collecting your army.
You know, like how every classic Risk game plays out.
Valid, but there's 3 things that are against you here, and all of them land under the category of if you fall behind, you stay behind.
Let's start with the brilliant fort walls, making it impossible to gain a region bonus if you never invade one. Next, the numerous dotted line backdoor entrances to almost every territory. And finally, this. It's a territory card. They allow you to buy more troops. You want one of these cards, but in order to get one, you have to take a territory.
Makes sense, but me, the last player, on my future very first gutted turn, I simply won't have the ultramarine manpower left to do that.
Meaning, I'm falling further and further behind until it's a death sentence. I mean, the sheer disrespect with this is absolutely palpable. Not only are you stuck with a faction that you don't want, but your opponents get to joyride through your territories and flex on all of your large forces, and then watch you struggle to count to 3 when your turn finally arrives. It's ridiculous. So let's look at what happens when you're not the last player, when you're the one who rolled a 6, player number 1.
It's the first player who gets first dibs on best factions. In this case, it's the orcs. The first player also gets to claim the first territory on the map, and subsequently gets claim to any leftovers, leaving them with simply more territories, meaning you physically have one more troop on the board. Thus, having more territories from the get-go means your territories are touching more of the enemy's territories, meaning you get prime placement for attacking opportunities. The first player also gets the strategic advantage of conducting the first attack of the game, an attack that finds the orcs with literally more troops on the board than any other faction, all thanks to the beginning reinforcement phase of your turn.
Why? Why are you getting reinforced on your very first turn? It sounds so strange. Like, is it just me?
All but guaranteeing the orcs can unleash utter destruction, and they get a sweet, sweet territory card.
Can you see the difference between the first and last player? It's as though they're not even really playing the same game. Listen, I'm running the Ultramarines, sitting as the 5th out of 5 players. With this turn order slanted heavily against me, it's pretty obvious I should just rage flip the table and go paint minis.
But you know what the irony here is? Risk Warhammer 40k already knows the turn order is rigged. They outright acknowledge the game needs balancing in the rulebook, but what they do to fix it, well, it barely scratches the surface.
What Risk Warhammer 40k decided was the fix to end all fixes. A way to balance everything, remove any slant, and give Risk players around the world a breath of fresh air. Just getting your professional medical advice here. Would you put a Band-Aid on a cannonball wound? Yeah, that's exactly how effective their fix really is.
Here, let me show you. You're staring at 4 territory cards, drawn at random and then handed to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th players. You may now begin laughing. This apparently solves everything, from the last player's death sentence to the first player's golden ticket.
Congratulations, 40k. You scienced up a solution. Praise the Emperor. I've seen the turn order roll pre-select who wins a game of Risk time and time again. Not on every game night because dice luck in battles is a thing, but it's become a baseline expectation.
So I channeled all my hatred and attempted a fix. I tried things like, on the first round, you can only attack the last player once. Last player gets to reroll for 1 failed battle. First player must give their first territory card to the last player, and so on.
None of it worked. So after many hours of troubleshooting and digging away at my board game hacker mind, I think I solved it.
To eliminate the first player claiming the best faction, territories, and getting extra territories during setup, factions are picked and territories are claimed in reverse order, from last to first.
Clever. And now, to solve the first player having the most troops on the board at game start,
Instead of waiting for beginning reinforcements at the start of your turn, players place them before the first turn begins, and then skips the reinforcement phase of that initial turn.
And that's it. This fixes the first player advantage and doesn't leave the last player's territories and armies eroded away before they even get their first turn.
but no time to celebrate. P.S. I put the rule fix in the description, so don't take my word for it. Have a gander. But there's something going on here. Something so effective, it makes everything we just talked about completely obsolete. It's something so deadly, it may actually be a massive board gaming curse. Because what I show you in this next video makes everything you know about attacking and Risk now absolute nonsense.